And welcome back. You're still watching Closing Bell, Southern Africa. Next up, the U.S. President and the Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, have called their talks about the debt ceiling productive, but they have not yet reached a conclusive remark. Now, they have to come to an agreement by the 1st of June, and failing to do that, they will send the U.S. into a default. To discuss this further, I'm joined by Nigel Green, CEO and founder of deVere Group. So, Nigel, in your latest statement, you're basically saying that investors should be short, I'm going to actually read it, shoring up their portfolios now for the economic fallout of the U.S. failing to raise the debt ceiling and defaulting on its financial responsibilities. Now, that is quite a statement. Run us through your rationale here. How close or possible are we from that scenario?
It's a possibility. So I think, when you're investing money, you've got to realize that, in today's world, many things can happen. Okay, let's put it that way. And whilst everybody, including me, thinks that it'll be settled at the last minute, we have to be cautious, and we have to be aware that there is a potential that it actually doesn't get sorted. So the things you can do to mitigate that risk.
What kind of things? Talk to us about it. And I mean, how are you viewing this from an investment perspective?
Well, I think, it depends on you, an individual as an investor. If you're cautious, then there's going to be one approach. If you're balanced, then you probably should just leave your money as it is. If you're adventurous, you might even be looking for opportunities. So let's say there's an election coming up in Africa. Okay, we'll pick any country you want to. And it's a year to go. Okay, and there's political theatre, can we call it that? What's going to happen? Okay, well, nobody actually knows the complete conclusion. It's likely it's going to get sorted, but there's no reason why you can't look at diversification into things like gold and really try and mitigate your risk and the currency risk as well. The dollar could, of course, fall if there was a default, which would be the first ever US default on payments.
Now, Nigel, you're talking diversification, which sounds to me like it's hedging your bets. It sounds to me like you're protecting yourself, or a strategy of protection. But I want to know how are people, because what's the saying? Never waste a crisis. How can we make money from this? Where are the opportunities?
Okay, wow. Okay, you love good questions, don't you, Tanya? Okay, let's go for it. Okay, I mean, there's lots. I mean, if you're brave, there's opportunities. So, I mean, JP Morgan, to quote somebody else, is saying that you should actually buy the volatility index. So that's called VIX. It's forward priced at 24. Okay, they say buy, okay, and sell it when it gets to 35. So really what they're anticipating, and there's a reasonable chance of it, is that volatility increases the closer we get to the deadline. Okay, so that would certainly be one, speculative, but it's a reasonable, logical trade. There'll be other people that just literally want to go the opposite direction, which I'll go more cautious, and they may even want their money on the sidelines. There's a saying, sell in May and go away. We've got lots of things. We've not just got the debt crisis. We've got other issues there with a recession approaching. How bad is it going to be? So there'll be people on the cautious side that don't want to speculate, but actually would prefer to be in a money market account where actually you can get reasonable yields right now in US dollars and some other currencies.
And Nigel, I mean, just to take a step back, we've still got a couple of days until we can officially look at the U.S. as having, well, not solved the U.S. debt ceiling crisis. My thoughts here is that we've been in this situation before in the past. It's not the first time that the U.S. has to have these conversations. It's not the first time that they have to raise the debt ceiling. So what's different here? Why are we having why is there kind of a sense of panic in the markets?
It's interesting. There's only one other country, which is Finland, that has this debt ceiling. So they have a predetermined amount in America, which is currently 31 trillion. They're literally running out of money, so they won't be able to pay pensioners, they won't be able to pay disability benefits, they won't be able to pay their debts. So unless it gets solved, then there's an issue. I mentioned the election before. There's an election in November next year. So just imagine the Republicans, which are the opposition at the moment, they want the Democrats not to spend so much money going into election year. The Democrats, they want to raise the ceiling. They want to be able to spend money in the election year. Interestingly, the public, and it's really what, the politicians, I'm going to call it political theatre, but unfortunately affects the global economy. They're the public are saying we actually want spending cuts, which is what the Republicans are saying. Okay, they're saying we can raise the ceiling, but let's spend less. The debt is getting out of control, and the public want that. So really what we're seeing is politicians playing to the voters. The negative is that confidence goes in the US, because will they default? Okay, unlikely, but the closer it gets to the deadline, then the more confidence is lost in the US. In effect, that has an effect on the US economy. So that's the real issue. And we know it's going to play out okay, or we think it is. However, okay, what damage does it do by this lack of confidence? I heard the last person you were talking about lack of confidence. What do people do? And we got this globally. Okay, we actually need, the reverse situation. We need some stability. We need freer trade. We need a world where actually we're trying to work together to actually get the global economy working better and have more people employed. Okay, we've got unemployment, as you know, obviously in South Africa in particular, but we've got issues around the world and we want those issues solved.
Yeah, and what is the dollar play in this time?
What does it do? Okay, so it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the dollar's a flight to safety. But, you get lots of confidence in the dollar. I mean, I think that most financial analysts would say the dollar is going to have a long-term decline. So, the Chinese, can we call it a battle of superpowers? The politicians battling in America, there's really, America's not winning. China's winning. China actually is becoming stronger globally and has the potential perhaps to take over as the reserve currency, or at least the dollar become less of a reserve currency. Perhaps people diversify more, perhaps they use gold more, but people are gradually losing confidence in the dollar. And I think just the argument is another dent in the confidence in the dollar overall and the US in general.
I think our next conversation has to be all about, if not the dollar, then what? But Nigel, thank you so much for joining us today. That was Nigel Green, CEO and founder at deVere Group.